Hello and welcome to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally and today we're doing something brand new. Interviews. It is something that I would like to get into a little bit more, and I have hesitated to do it previously because I think I'm kind of bad at interviewing because I tend to be a little bit long-winded and loquacious, but hopefully with your suggestions and a little bit of time, I can improve. So comment down below, let me know what I did good, let me know what I did bad, let me know how I can improve in the future. Your feedback is very much appreciated. Also, in those comments, please be respectful to my guests. You can insult me till the cows come home. I'm a big boy, I can take it, and I deal with that on the internet all the time. But I don't usually delete comments, but I do think I'm going to make sure if anyone is being disrespectful to any guests I have in these interviews, I might have to delete anyone that's being an ass. And, you know, just don't be an ass and we won't have any issues. Anyway, this is a really crazy, sad, dramatic story that someone had messaged me about, and I just wanted to, and they also did as well, wanted to share it with all of you fine people on YouTube. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. It helps it get out to more people on YouTube, and it's very much appreciated. And if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe to the channel. Anyway, with all of that being said, run the cat intro. I have a very special guest that has a really fascinating story. I get a lot of emails, texts, phone calls, and it's hard to sort through all of them. But when I heard this one, it really blew my mind. So let me introduce you to Ophelia Hayes.
Hello, everyone. Well, he already introduced me.
So I usually don't do a whole lot of interviews or anything, so I'm going to be pretty terrible at this.
Like, what do I say?
I'm sure we can get through it together.
Yes. Okay. Well, I've been officially this fellowship now for 2.5 years, and I was born and raised into being a Jehovah's Witness. My mother, she's still currently an active baptized witness. My father is not, so I did grow up in a divided household, you could say. My dad, he was very what you would deem an apostate. You know, he was not for, us being witnesses. But growing up, and my mom was really determined, for us to grow up as witnesses. So she always had, elders over to having us, trying to make sure that we stick to being a Jehovah's Witness. So,
and when you say your dad was an apostate, at what level would you say that he resisted, or how involved was he with hey, is this really true, or I don't want you guys going to meetings?
Oh yeah, he was very I really don't want you guys going to meetings. He would question all the doctrines of what the witnesses teach. He always doubted how do you know the governing body is really appointed by God. He questioned 1914, 607, everything.
All of the hot spots.
He doubted. Oh, yes. And so because of that, and honestly, my mom just probably being the exemplary witness mom, doing what she can to keep us strong in the faith.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up having a very distant relationship with my dad because I felt okay, my most important relationship in my life should be Jehovah. And I remember at a young age thinking well, if having a relationship, with my dad is going to affect my relationship with Jehovah, then I'm not going to have a relationship with my dad.
Yeah, that's crazy. And was it almost well, Jehovah will be my dad then?
No, yes. Yeah. I remember actually having a lot of a mini interview at the Kingdom Hall talking about how Jehovah was my spiritual father because, yeah, it's very cringe because of the situation with my dad. And I remember telling my dad that one time that I could be fine because I have a relationship with Jehovah. And I remember sometimes crying to him because I was I don't want you to die at Armageddon. you have to listen to Jehovah, like you need to get baptized. And so that it put a lot of emotional turmoil at such a young age.
Yeah, probably on both of you,
Growing,
right?
yes,
Because do you have
yes.
kids now?
Well, no, I'm well pregnant with my first kid.
Oh, well, congratulations. Very exciting. Very exciting. That's what we like to hear.
Yes. Yes. And now that, like, from this perspective, I think about my dad, and I can only imagine how difficult it was for him, too, to watch their child get so involved in this doctrine or this cult, knowing how much it was going to affect their lives, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting baptized at 12, and my dad did go to my baptism. Like, he was there because I asked him to be. And I remember at one point I completely stopped talking to my dad for like a year because he kept trying to talk to me about my, what I believed at that time. And even the elders and my mother were encouraging me, like, you need a one or anything that's gonna affect your relationship with Jehovah. And they would always use that scripture. I believe it's in Matthew that said, like, Jesus didn't come here to like create peace. He came here to divide mother
Oh, my
against daughter,
goodness.
father. Yeah,
I've heard other people doing that before, and it kind of scares you, right? You're taking, like, the peaceful man's Jesus words and turning it into this, hey, let's divide families apart. It's really creepy.
yes. And so, like, when I would read that scripture, I would be like, man, like, that's true. He's separating those who are gonna make it to paradise and those who aren't. And it's just, and then I felt like I started like emotionally disattaching myself from my dad because I felt like, well, he's probably going to die in Armageddon. And, why feel super close to him if that's going to happen, So it was always, so I did grow up with that, like, emotional disconnect, distance because of like what I really believed was going to happen. And so I just still think a lot of how I handle certain things emotionally too has to do with how that situation as a witness grew up, just emotionally disattaching yourself from people because they're gonna die in Armageddon. So
I know.
why build this great bond with them?
I had my grandma was inactive for as long as I can remember, and I remember being a teenager and thinking to myself, oh, she's not active, and so she's going to die at Armageddon. Like, she still believes, she still even shuns me now, even though she's been inactive for 40 years. But I remember, like, having to come to terms with that when you're like a 16-year-old and you're like just trying to figure life out and not go crazy, and thinking, oh, this person that I care about is going to die in the immediate future, was absolutely completely messed up.
Yes, I really think it's not healthy for kids to grow up thinking that way. Like, it's, when I think back, that's insane. And as a witness, that's just totally normal. Like, and you're congratulated for feeling that way, and you're praised. You're being put like as an exemplary, spiritually strong person because you're putting your relationship with Jehovah first. And so I think from that point on, I was like, all right, I've already got like this far committed. Like, I'm gonna, I kept going.
Yeah.
So, I got homeschooled. I was homeschooled in like throughout half of high school.
Oh, okay.
So when I was 16, I started regular pioneering.
Jeez, you were early.
Yeah.
You were on my level.
Yes.
Okay, I see you.
Yes. And I started regular pioneering. And I remember at that time, I was just like, oh, I just need to finish high school, get like a little part-time job so I can keep pioneering. Which, looking back, I really regret because,
Yeah.
life is expensive. And I could have like went to school for something. But yeah, so it's like I did everything around me, like school. It was just like I just had to do it. My whole mind and everything was just focused on like, okay, I'm gonna pioneer, and then when I graduate, like I'm gonna move to another country and like serve where the need is greater. And so my mind was in my mind, this was the truth, and anything that happened, Jehovah was gonna take care of it, and like it's an imperfect, no, it's a perfect organization ran by imperfect people, as they would say. So that was my
God, I haven't heard that
thinking.
exact expression in a while.
Yeah. Which leads to my first, like, I would say, like, experience that really kind of jolted my faith a bit was when I was 16. I was pioneering, and there was a brother in the congregation. He was close to his 30s, like 28, 29, and he was a ministerial servant, regular pioneer. We ended up spending a lot of time together in service. Well, and as brothers in the congregation, they take the lead in service, so he would always put me in a service group. And at one point, he had called me on my phone. We're talking, and then he tells me, like, hey, I really like you, and I would like to start dating and getting to know you.
And you were 16 at the time.
Yeah, I was 16, a minor, and he was 28, 29. And looking back, I was kind of flattered, because during that time, it was almost like a norm where brothers who were like in their 20s would kind of see a sister at like maybe 16, and then they would wait till she was 18, date her, and then marry her. And so that was pretty, like, socially acceptable. But looking back, that's crazy. Like, if you're in your 20s, you should not be eyeballing a 16-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a psychology expert or anything here, but I just, in my brain, I'm like, okay, when I drive by a high school, I see, high school kids. They're children.
Yeah.
And as someone in my 30s, like, I don't drive by a high school and think, I'm going to marry her one day. Like,
Yeah, ooh, potential marriage mate.
But
Yeah.
actually, though, like, if it's kind of common in the area, they are looking at a child and saying, wow, look, not bad. Potential there. What's wrong with you?
Like, yes, like, it was crazy. But at that time, I was kind of like, wow, he's a ministerial servant. He's a pioneer. I went and told my mom about it, and she kind of was like, like, okay, well, I mean, like, if you wait till you're 18, but I think she was still, like, pretty taken back, because, I was a minor. And I ended up telling another pioneer sister. I was 16, I was excited, and she kind of was like, that's weird, like, that's not right. And so I ended up getting to the elders, and then I ended up being called to the back room. My parents were with me, my mom, my stepdad, and this brother. And he gets there, and they're asking him, like, about this conversation, and he straight up says, like, oh, I did not say that. Like, I did not tell her that. Like, just straight up lying. And
it was you and your friend and your mom that basically, like, initiated this process of going to the elders.
Yes.
And ostensibly, if he's a ministerial servant, he's probably friends with the elder people,
the elders
and everything.
Yes.
So you guys are, like, at an immediate disadvantage, and your dad is not a witness. So it's not like you're going there with your dad as well.
Yeah, and so it's like, I felt like all the, like, and also how it was set up, like, he was sitting on the side with the elders, and then it was like me and my mom and so it was just already, like, weird.
Yeah, and you have all the powerful men at the congregation. Here, I'm just a single sister, right? Or
I'm just a single sister.
And I'm
like,
underage.
Nobody. Yeah. And so, and then immediately the elders are like, well, why would you lie? Like, what? Like, not even thinking for a second that this brother could be lying. It was immediately all on me, the minor, and I was like, what the heck? I'm not lying. And I was just in shock that he was lying, because I'm thinking, like, we just prayed over this meeting. Like, Jehovah's Spirit, should kind of determine, like, help them see that he's lying. So I was just so confused as to what was happening,
Did that, like, have an effect to
because
where you felt like
mind,
you were crazy?
Yes. I felt like, what is going on here? And, the governing body always teaches, like, oh, all these meetings are ran by Jehovah's Spirit. And I was just like, well, where is the spirit? Because he's getting away with lying right now. Like, what's going on? So this meeting lasted about, like, 2 hours, I want to say. And finally he said, because, I mean, he could not get out of the fact, because I did save some text from him were like a little sketch, like things like, oh, you look nice today, or oh, you look pretty in this color, whatever, little stuff like that. And so, you know, he couldn't really keep on lying anymore. So he's like, okay, yeah, I said that. And even then, they still somehow put it on me. Like, they were like, well, as a young sister, you know, it's really important to watch how you carry yourself and, you know, pay attention to what you wear because you could be putting brothers in a tempting situation. And
but there's an adult in this situation.
Exactly. I was like, I'm like looking back, I'm like, I'm the minor.
Yes.
Like, what the heck?
It's a very simple, easy like thing to sort out. Who's the adult? Okay, you're to blame. You may go now.
Period. But being, again, really mentally into it, like, I really took that on. I was like, wow, like, I let him on. Like, I can't believe it. Like, I put us in the situation. So I remember even apologizing.
Holy.
Like, yeah, like later on, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, if I gave you the wrong impression and like that it came to this. And I was like thinking like, and no one was saying like, hey, no, like it is not your fault at all. Like a grown man should not be coming to a minor like this, you know? And so, but I really thought like it was me. Like I did something to cause the situation.
Well, you were told that, so
you know,
it makes sense you thought that.
Yeah. So, you know, time passed. We kind of like stopped talking for a while. And then I'm like now 18, 19, and like he comes back. He's like, hey, you are legal now. And I was still kind of thrown off because I was like, what? Okay, like I guess he really did wait. But so I did agree to kind of, you know, start dating him, getting to know him. And during that time, all these other sisters like started coming to me and things were coming to light that he had a pattern of dating minor sisters, like as young as like 15 years old, making out with them, you know, fondling, all this stuff going on. And the elders knew about it. The elders knew about what was going on. And they still chose to counsel me for what happened and not this guy's a predator.
Mm-hmm.
And not once did he ever lose his privileges. He remained a ministerial servant. He remained a pioneer. And even when we were dating and things like started going bad and I wanted to break up with him, I remember like the whole, like half the congregation, I remember, even older sisters who are elders' wives, blaming me, like talking bad about me, saying it was all my fault that this stuff was being said about him, like this. And they're like, and they kept saying, well, he's a ministerial servant. Like that really meant something, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact that the elders never did anything about it and he never lost privileges, I felt like that also meant to the congregation, like, well, obviously people are lying on him. Because if he did do that, he would have lost his privileges.
The hard problem with that is, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we always viewed someone having privileges as a sign that they had God's approval in spirit, right? So if someone's an elder, someone's a ministerial servant or a pioneer, whatever it might be, they are immediately viewed as, well, they couldn't have done anything that bad because Jehovah's Spirit is obviously like operating, he's using them. So that's evidence that everything is okay. So the conclusion in their minds is, so it must be you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm the problem. And I will have to say, like, for my mom, she did defend me a lot. And she put some older sisters in their place. She was like, my daughter's 18. He's like 32.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? You know, so, you know, I am grateful that I did have my mom speaking up for me during that time. Because looking back, a young 18-year-old, you're still a kid. You are still a kid. And you have all these people blaming the victim of a situation and putting the predator on this pedestal. And so I, again, really thought, like, is this really true? Like, what? Like, you know, I doubted myself so much. And he was a very, like, controlling, crazy person. And
we've already established that he goes to a high school and looks for marriage mates. So, yeah.
Yeah, and he had, you know, predator. He preys on younger women because he knows they're more vulnerable, and
he knows he
the
can get away
elders,
with it.
yeah, like they let him get away with it for that. He ended up going to Bethel.
Jeez.
And I remember when he got accepted to Bethel, that really shocked me, and I think that was the first time that I ever felt like, is this the truth? Because, you know, again, they say like Jehovah picks the people that get to go to Bethel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jehovah's spirit is in the whole process, and like you can't get into Bethel if you're not on good standing. Like it's hard to get into Bethel. So for him to be accepted and go, that means those elders wrote a great letter about him.
And you said
And
earlier
put
they
good.
knew about what?
Mhm.
Did they tell you that they knew about it, or how did you come to find out that they knew?
They all knew everything that he was doing. Like I personally knew 3 of the sisters that that were also his victims, that they went to those same elders that I went to.
And was that all in the same congregation or multiple congregations?
Multiple congregations. He had, well, there was 3 of us in the same congregation that were victims of his, and then he went to other congregations. I mean, different cities. He had multiple. I mean, like about 30 or more sisters that he was
30
doing all. Yeah, a lot.
Holy, I was gonna ask, do you know like roughly how many? I doubt you could ever know like exactly, but
yeah, but it was a lot. Like when I was surprised that in another city that's like 40 minutes away, his name came up, and a sister was like, he's a creep, he this and that, and I was like, 40 minutes away, like what the heck?
Yeah.
And so when he went to Bethel, I was like, how could those elders put say, like, you know, because they have to, you know, on the back they have the, how could they put that he's exemplary? How could they put he's mentally stable? First off, like how could they put all these things that are lies about him and then let him go to like
making out with a 15-year-old when you're 30 is not okay.
It's gross. Like I remember it really did for a long time, and even thinking back to it, it disturbs me. And so that's why when I was waking up and reading the different cases about all the sexual abuse that goes on in the congregation that's hidden, I believe because I was like, I've seen it firsthand what these brothers with positions can get away with.
Yeah.
And it's like, so for me, it wasn't like, oh, it could never. I was like, if they had no problems hiding that and letting this person go to Bethel, what else, you know, would they let go under the rug?
Yeah, and then your mind immediately goes to, okay, this is my personal experience, and although I like to think I'm special, we all know in the back of our mind we're not that special, so this must be happening all across the world.
Exactly. And it really shows to me like it is possible, because the fact that it was so normalized that a 16-year-old can capture the attention of an older brother, or even if you're in your 30s trying to marry an 18-year-old, like she's still a teenager, you know, like just how all of that was so normalized, and it's not viewed like, okay, why is this very adult person only reaching out to young women? And I feel like they're not really protected, because as a sister in a congregation, you can't really do much unless you're married to a brother who has privilege.
Yeah.
So as a young sister, a brother who has privileges, who's interested, you're like, oh, like this is an opportunity to do more. You know, you're drawn to that. And I feel like some of these brothers in the congregation know that, and they prey on sisters, and I've seen it happen a lot throughout my time being a. So like all that coming out, I was like, yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And what year was that you like started hearing about some of the CSA problems that Watchtower has?
When I heard about it, it was about 3.5 years ago when I actually heard it like from a news about what was going on. And I was like, whoa. And I remember hearing like a lot of friends like, oh, that's just apostates, or oh, that's just Satan trying to, put doubt in our minds. But then immediately that situation that happened to me when I was 16, 18, like came into my head, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, I think this is true. Like, because like in my mind too, I was thinking, so we're just gonna call these people liars? Like all these
They're
victims,
all
like they're
lying.
lying.
Surely all of them are crazy.
Yeah. And so, but again, during that time, I really believed this was the truth. So it's like I wouldn't let myself go too far in that thought process. So I was just like, well, and I remember talking to an elder about it, and it was like one of the elders that was on that case, and he's like, well, this is a perfect organization ran by imperfect people, and like, we all make mistakes. That's all he said. And then I was just like, okay, he's right. But not one elder ever came and apologized to me for like, making me feel a certain way or for what had happened. Like, or even any of the sisters for like the horrible things that they were saying about me. No one ever came and said like, I'm really sorry, you're only 18.
Or we're going to report this guy to the police because we don't know what he possibly could be up to now, and he has this clear pattern that we're aware of.
Yes. And then he ended up getting married to a younger sister, and I remember people like who knew about what he had done flying out to his wedding and being so happy for him and like praising him. And I was just in my mind like, how? Like, so, and I remember in my mind just thinking, I feel terrible for this young girl he's marrying because she has no idea who she's marrying. Like, he had to go to a whole nother state to get married, and it just, it was bad. And so I just remember like that just really bothering me, but just like putting it in the back of my mind, well, you know what, they're imperfect. Jehovah knows what really happened eventually. And then just putting it in the back of my mind, and then I like just continued on with this spiritual journey.
So after all of the shenanigans and everything has gone on and he's gotten married and moved on with his life, at some point you hear about the other issues with regard to CSA and the congregation worldwide, and that doesn't quite shake your faith. So what was the thing that sort of brought you completely to the point where you're like, okay, I need to really start examining what I believe and why?
Well, it happened like years later, fortunately, but it did. I was already married at that time. I'd been married for 5 years. And, the marriage was pretty rough. And it was definitely one of the most trying times in my life. And I remember just hearing at that time a lot of marriage talk of, you have to stay married. It's forever. Jehovah, you made a vow to this person, and Jehovah, and how really there's very few exceptions to leave a marriage. And it really started bothering me because like this marriage was affecting like my mental health, my emotional health. Like I was just so unhappy. And I remember sitting at an assembly, or no, it wasn't an assembly, it was a Watchtower study all about marriage and the vow you made. And I remember thinking like, I cannot do this. Like I cannot do this. Like, and I remember that article said something basically along the lines of, if you are contemplating divorce, then that means that there's a problem with your spirituality. So that statement really made me start to tick, because I was thinking like, how can they say that that's a reflection on my spirituality when I think any person who's in a relationship where they're being emotionally abused, verbally or physically, even in some cases sisters are being sexually abused in their marriage, like they're going to want to divorce. Like, what does that have to do with how? Yeah, exactly. Like, what does that have to do with someone being spiritual? Like, that to me felt like That's
They're
ridiculous.
drawing
Like, and
connections to
how
your spirituality that don't need to be drawn.
exactly. And again, I go talk to the elders about some problems within the marriage, and again, it's put back on me. And I tell them, like, he has anger problems. I'm feeling this way. This is going on. He also had, a problem like with pornography and stuff. And, as a witness, like, that's a really big deal.
Like while you
And
guys were married.
while we were married, yeah.
That's an
And
awkward one.
and then it turned, yeah. And then it turns into like, well, are you giving your marital due? And I'm like, first off, like, what, again, like, how am I going to control what a grown ass man does? Like, and the fact that the whole attitude, like, it's due, like, it's owed to him that you have sex with your husband. And it's like, and I remember thinking, like, it's not owed to him. Like, what the heck? Like, if he's not making me feel loved or supported, taking care of me emotionally, financially, I'm just like, it's still owed to him. Like, what the heck? And I just remember just thinking, like, okay, I'm Jehovah, like, this is your arrangement. Like, this is the truth. Like, this is how we're really supposed to live our life right now. Like,
it's an experience I can try and get my head around, but I can't fully understand, because I imagine as a woman, a sister in the congregation, you're sitting there and thinking, well, what's owed to me? Nothing.
Yeah, literally.
So I'm nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how I felt. It's like, in the congregation, you can't have too much of an opinion, because then you're, viewed unsubmissive or whatever. And even in your marriage, if you're making a lot of dumb decisions, you still have to support that decision, because that's what Jehovah expects of you. And it just really started making me think, like, is this really the truth? Because I don't see how all these things is going to determine what you guys know about my personal relationship with Jehovah. Like, it's supposed to be a personal thing between you and Jehovah. And now it's all these external things that are being judged by other people, by men, to determine, yes, you're spiritual, no, you're not spiritual. And then once you get put into that box, you're treated very differently. And I felt that, because I went from someone who was viewed as like this person, like, I was always treated so nice in the congregation, like, everyone loved being around. She's questionable. And then being treated totally different because these elders felt how I was thinking was not spiritual. And so then I got put into a different box.
Yeah, it's like, you can do everything within your power. You can be the pioneer. You can be that exemplary person. But as soon as you go against the thing that they think, like, oh, well, this ministerial servant or this elder or this arrangement that we have, or even this thing that I've said and told you, like, elders give counsel and then they think, well, that's absolute truth, bada bing, bada boom. As soon as you go any way against that, now you go out of exemplary, you go out of spiritual, and you're immediately a problem.
Exactly. And they, like, treat you as such. And I was just thinking, like, how is this loving? How is this encouraging? And I just remember being so just depressed. And like, again, coming from, like, someone who was getting a lot of privileges to, and literally a few months before that, I had, like, a part at an assembly, and everything, just like, my whole world was collapsing because I confided in one elder about in my marriage, and got deemed this harlot of a sister.
That's so gross. And you're the victim, and here they are. So twice you've gone to the elders now, and both times you're an actual, like, victim of abusive behavior, and what they've done is told you that you're actually the problem.
Exactly. So, and so I remember just thinking, like, but I made all these sacrifices, like, I did all these things, like, it always says, like, how Jehovah will repay you, and I'm like, I'm very repaid right now. Like, I'm like, I still don't have a career. I'm broke.
Talk about a what
I'm
have
in
you
this
done for me lately moment.
I know, like I'm in a horrible marriage. Like, what the heck? And it's like I felt like no matter what you did, what they said is like spiritually right or correct. Like everything was failing. Like nothing was right. And so during that time, you know, COVID was hitting. We were all on lockdown. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I just, when I saw in the news about some of the sexual assault cases, I decided to look it up. Because in my mind, I was like, it's the news. I'm going to look up what's on the news.
Yeah.
That's how, and I was already like feeling very like spiritually weak, you could say, or more like awakened and very disillusioned by the congregation and just the organization
you've been done
itself.
Wrong your whole life, essentially.
Yes. And when I started looking up all these cases, how also seeing how the governing body, like they were being sued and paying millions of dollars. And I'm like, here they are on the broadcast talking about donations and they're paying all these fees in court. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
You know, so it just seeing now, every time I would hear talks or certain things, I just started seeing like something is just not right. Like this just can't be the truth, because I started seeing how much it's operated by man. Like if Jehovah's Holy Spirit is really involved in every single meeting and all these decisions, this would not be happening right now. Like all of these things would not be happening. And eventually got to a point where, you know, I ended up leaving my marriage, had a judicial committee, and my judicial committee, it just was like they did not care what was going on in my marriage. They did not care. Okay, well, what led you to this action? Like, how are you emotionally? It was like you broke a God's law. Like they were so focused on what I did and nothing about like, well, how can we help you? Like, you know, not even once thinking like, well, maybe we should talk to your husband and tell him like he shouldn't be acting like that. And I remember like one elder said in the committee, well, I do that with my wife. And I'm like, well, I feel bad for her. Like, it's just like, it really made me realize it's a man operated religion. Like, this is not like, I was thinking like, how can Jehovah again be in this meeting? And he knows how much really I used to love being a witness and was so focused on being a spiritual person. Like, how can he sit here and then decide, you know what, everything you did was not enough and we're kicking you out and you're going to be cut off from everything, you know, like how?
Yeah. And it's like, I remember when I was like trying to wake my ex-wife up, and one of the big things when I would bring things up that she would continue to say is, well, where's Jehovah? Where's Jehovah in all of this? Like, I don't see his evidence at all. Like at every single turn when you're like, okay, this is what a man-made organization would do. This is what God's one true organization would do. They always fall on this is what a man-made organization would do. And it sounds like from your experience, it's just like came in waves. My God.
And I was just like, and I will say like there are elders throughout my time being a that were amazing, and you could tell they were just genuinely good people and cared about people, and, you know, but then it's like there are a lot there that take it as a big ego trip about this power. I get to make these decisions, and so, you know, I really saw, I was like, this is all man. Like, I just was just thinking at that time. It made me think about Moses when he already had led the Israelites like for 40 years. They're right there at the promised land. And because he probably honestly forgot to say, you know, Jehovah was the one who brought the water out. Like the Israelites already knew that. Like they've been seeing all of his miracles. And Jehovah was like, nope, you're not entering. Thank you for your 40 years of service, but you failed. And like that's how I felt. And I was like, this is like messed up. Like then what's the point of all of this? Like literally, what is the point?
And you had already at that point you had already done everything you could as a sister, right? You had like gone to a foreign country pioneering.
Yes.
Done
Yes,
all of that good stuff.
and so it just like really made me feel like all those years of sacrifice, like all those years of everything was like, if that was really Jehovah making that decision, I was like, that's a slap in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, I've been in this marriage like for 5 years, everything. And it was like, I've been praying, I've been doing everything you said that is supposedly the spiritual way to do things, and it's not working. So either you ain't real or like this is really all, I just been living a lie. So obviously, the elders, because I told them basically like I have no intention fixing my marriage. I have no intentions on changing what I'm doing. So, they're like disfellowshipped. And then, they read you the scripture, like basically if you don't come back or change your ways, you're going to die,
Mm-hmm.
I'll never get it. So I was like, thanks.
What was that like for you? Like staring down the big scary world that you've always heard is full of evils, and now you're at this like crossroads where you're like, well, I can't be a Jehovah's Witness because of this marriage I'm in, and it's killing me inside, quite literally.
Yes.
It's like, what was that like?
Honestly, it was so like soul shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like, I had a whole life. I had so many friends from everywhere. I knew so many people. Like, my career decisions were based on being a witness. Like, where I lived was based on being a witness. And it was like my whole identity. And those were like all these decisions that I made. And now, and I felt like for years, I was told how to be as a spiritual sister, to be exemplary.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember walking out like relieved, like, wow, like I don't have to go to meetings right now. Like I don't have to preach. Like I could literally just focus on myself. But then I'm like, who am I?
Yeah.
Like if I'm not a witness, if I'm not this sister who pioneered and served in other countries and this and that, I'm like, who am I? Like now I'm like, I felt like that was all for nothing. Like what do I have to show for myself?
So and sad.
Like I really did feel that
is wrapped in being a witness. So I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing. I walked out, felt great. I'm like, okay, I'm never going to another meeting again. I even said the closing prayer to the last meeting I ever went to, and I walked out, got in the car, and got home, and was like, wow, what next?
Yeah, like what do and just literally in a meeting that probably lasted maybe an hour, my whole life changed. Like from one moment to the next. Like before that meeting, I could call my friends, talk to them, and it's like now I could never call them.
Mm-hmm.
I could never talk to them. And then, like she's like, I can't even have a relationship with my mom or my younger brother. And, I did cry because it is losing somebody, it is it is, grieving something that used to be really close to you.
Yeah, no, it's awful.
That part was really hard. And I remember again, I was just like, how is this a loving or like how is telling your daughter like, well, I will no longer have contact with you until you come back as a witness. And even now, I'm pregnant with my first kid. She's not once showed any interest in her granddaughter, like nothing. As long as like I'm not a witness, she's like, and I just felt like that is the most cruelest thing.
Yeah.
But as a witness, you really believe you're doing the right thing, that you're saving this person. And now being out and really doing the research, because I was like, you know what? Because at that time I was having doubts, like, should I go back? Should I stay, out? Because it's a lot to process, during that time. But I said, you know what? I'm going to do research before I go back. Because if I go back, like, I don't have doubts because it's miserable being have doubts.
Yeah, you have to go back for the right reasons. You can't go back just because of the emotional thing.
And so, after watching a lot of videos of not even just like, how they say apostate bash with, it's not bad. It's just taking doctrine, teaching, core beliefs as a witness. And it's like, how is this true? And it's like, there's nothing there to prove that these 8 men are specifically chosen handpicked by Jehovah and Jesus to lead us all. And the scriptures they would always use are like two scriptures. I'm like, how can I base a huge teaching on 2 scriptures?
It sounds so like
That's
Looney
ridiculous.
Tunes. It's like Wile E. Coyote, creating some goofy trap. You're like, how did I buy this? Like, it doesn't even make sense from the Bible. It doesn't make sense from logic.
Yes. And I'm just like, and then finally, I watched actually one of the videos about the elders book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no wonder why they only let elders see this though, because this is ridiculous. Like, this is crazy. Like, everything is so micromanaged, And I was like, to me, I was like, no, they always say it's like your relationship with Jehovah is personal, but there's nothing personal about it. You have men telling you what actions, how you think, how you dress, what music you listen to, what you watch. That all determines how much of a spiritual person you are.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's no self-expression. You can't. I mean, I even remember like thinking back, even from at least as a sister, like even certain nail polish colors you have to be careful because sisters might get offended. Yes.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
Yes, I remember. I was talking to CEO's wife at that time, and I was asking her like, "Oh, like what are some like the things that kind of harsh?" She's like, "What? When I go to certain areas, I can't wear this like this nail polish color because it stumbles some sisters." And I was like thinking, "Wow, okay." Mm-hmm. But it's just crazy, like nail polish color. Like now you're telling me, like you have to be worried about what nail polish you put in on your nails, So it's like again leaving that high level of control, and I feel even more so as a woman. Mm-hmm. They say, "Oh, love our sisters. Oh, we love them." No.
Just no.
Let me just take a first that no. Yeah. We are secondary citizens, okay? Absolutely. And I feel like the whole like SKE thing now where single sisters apply, I'm like, really, what can you're still just going as a pioneer? Like I feel like they just did that to put like a binky in everyone's mouth. Like
that's a really good way to put it. Here's just a little pacifier for you. Stop crying now.
Yeah, like to make it seem like you're cool, but you're not really, And so it's just like leaving that, I really had to learn like it's okay to speak up for yourself if you don't like something or you're not agreeable. Even though, yes, I'm a woman, I can say, no, I do not like that idea, and I'm not doing it.
Learning the power of no was like one of the big... Yeah. I think I'm still trying to navigate that. Like, even after years of being out, I have a hard time telling people no. Like, I just always wanted to be like, yes, 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 yes. And so, like, it's something I'm having to, like, actively train myself and, like, actually do self-care. It's a wild concept.
It is. And you don't realize, like, and I've gone to therapy since I've left, and you don't realize how much really it is a cult until you leave, and how much it affects and stunts your ability to function as an adult in the regular world. Because you're always taught to put others first and to think of others. Like, it's never okay to think about yourself really and your needs, and you constantly like I remember like. Sometimes they say like, oh, in talks, like your life is too easy. It's because you're not doing enough. So it's like, as a witness, you're living in this constant state of struggle and survival.
Even if you're doing good, you're supposed to think that you're not, okay, well, if you're doing good, it's bad. So now you need to go and do more so you can stress yourself the hell out.
So it's like I had to learn not to live life stressed. Like, and then even like your relationship, money, like it's okay to want a good paying job. It's okay to want money,
Yeah.
That's how this world goes, and so I had to get used to my relationship like with money, living comfortably and not feeling bad for it, and all these things, it comes with time, and you can unlearn and undo it. And there are days still, even though it's been some years that have passed, there are friends that I still do miss. Obviously, two with my mom and my younger brother. It sucks not being able to share like this huge milestone with them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like the freedom and relief you get to think for yourself and to be in a situation in life, where you're usually taught, well, what would Jesus do? Or think about this principle. It's like, no.
What would Ophelia do?
What does Ophelia want?
Uh-huh.
What's going to make me happy? Like, it's something that I feel is not worth ever giving up. Just talk to people again. I feel like I hope and I was gonna say hope and pray, but no, just a word of habit sometimes. Like, I really hope that one day, they also wake up and they get to experience this level of freedom, because you're always taught as when it's like, oh, you're free from all these things. You're free from possibly a drug addict. You're free from getting kidnapped at a club or something. Mm-hmm. But it's like, these are very rare things that can occur.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the meantime, you're living in a prison of fear, in a prison of not making it to Armageddon. Mm-hmm.
Your life goes from fear to hope. Like in one day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so it's like when you break out of that jail and you realize this world is not that scary, like people are not out to get you and, do these terrible things to you. Like, I've met a lot of amazing people. And even now, like, my fiance, he knows how to be a good partner. He doesn't need the Bible to tell him, how to be a good partner.
Imagine that. You can just be nice to people and it kind of sort of works out.
Exactly. Like, you can be a good person. You can do all these things. You can be accomplished. You can have goals all around being a witness and things that make you happy. Have your own. That there are really amazing and great people out in this world that are going to be great friends. And it's like now, I have people who know that, like, I don't have my mom with me, like, during this time, and they step up. Like, they make me feel so loved and cared for. And it's like, you're taught, oh, the world would never do that. They'll never. And it's like, that's not true. That is far from the truth. Like, there's a lot of great people that aren't witnesses, and they don't need the Bible to tell them how to be good people.
Exactly. If you could, I only think of this just because I've gotten several messages over the last week or two from people that are ranging from 15 to 19, 20 that still live at home with their parents. And, they've just asking for advice or just drawing on personal experience. If you could just give anyone that's in that situation where they're still a late teenager and they're, know that it's not the truth, but they're still kind of stuck, any advice that you would kind of give to anyone out there for the great people of YouTube?
Yes. My advice would be set yourself up to be able to move out and leave when you can. Look for jobs, start looking for jobs, or maybe even a trade that's going to be able to help you make enough so you can support yourself. And if you're making friends, outside, of the congregation, but of course you have to be a little careful. Your parents be catching on.
The internet is a good place.
Yeah, the internet's a good place. And just, it is a feeling stuck somewhere that is not the truth. But from what I've seen, a lot of people who just rush and run out, they have a really hard time and then end up going back. So if you really just want to be successful in leaving, just being a little patient and setting yourself up, a job, a place, and then you leave and then have your life set up.
Yeah.
And that would be my advice. So you can make it a permanent change and then continue, living happy and making your own rules for your own self.
I've talked to many people that have done that exact same thing you mentioned. They leave because they're like, oh, 607, 1914. They leave. Yeah. And then they end up having to move back with their parents and going back to meetings and stuff. And it's really difficult. So having that little bit of patience, I think, is really important, because the world can be a nice bed of flowers, or it can be hard cement.
Yes.
So it kind of depends on you just having a good plan and taking a breath of fresh air and saying, okay, I know this isn't the truth. I'm one step ahead of everyone now. Now I can make
Exactly.
my plans.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I would say is be a little patient, just, I don't know, do the things to not put you in the radar too bad.
Hmm.
And then when you have your chance and set up, make your
See
exit.
ya. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I very much appreciate having you. And yeah, if you ever want to join me for a live stream or something, you can
Oh,
definitely do
yeah.
that in the future. I think that'd be
Okay.
fun. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome having you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon again on a live stream.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so thus ends the JW Thoughts first foray into interviews. If you would like to be interviewed or you have a crazy story or anything, send me an email, send me a text, give me a call. I will just say this right now. Don't please don't take like offense if I don't respond right away, and I won't take offense if you send me the exact same message like 18 times, because sometimes it might take that in order to get my attention. But yeah, so please reach out to me. I would like to do more interviews, as I said, going forward. And yeah, I can't get to everyone always right away. But yeah, if I will not be bothered in the slightest if you just keep sending messages, because sometimes I need a little bit of a slap before I might notice it, because I do get a pretty decent amount of messages and everything that comes through. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.